VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, Gordon Morris, and welcome to Crosstalk. Today's program is going to be very interesting. Stick with us. I have one item I need to cover this in the earlier part of the program, and then we'll be right on with our guest. First of all, I'm holding an email that says this: I'm a listener from Australia. I listen to your podcast every day over iTunes. Thank you so much for keeping us informed of current events with a Christian perspective. And she says, as Vic often says, the inmates are running the asylum, and here is an example. And she gives us a link, a video link, and it runs for a few minutes, but in summary, it's about an island near Madagascar that falls under the Australian sovereignty. And here's the kick. The population are almost 100% Muslim, and 80% of them are on welfare paid by the Australian taxpayer. The gentleman in charge of approving the welfare payments is the local imam. Note that some of these people have never worked or have up to 6 children, all paid by the courtesy of the Australian taxpayer. Now, she says, I understand that most of your show is relating to U.S. matters. However, I thought if you do any shows showing on the Muslim takeover in the Western world and how our Western governments are encouraging this report might serve as an example and to show what is going on in other countries. Well, I'm going to invite you to go to our website, vcyamerica.org, and you can click on that link, and you can see that video. It's a long link, so if you just click on the link go to vcyamerica.org, and you can click on the link and find out how Australia is ending up having to pay for Islamics who are not even working. Well, you heard the story, and nothing seems to be new these days. Everything's happening, including gay marriage, being approved by our highest executive officers. But today we're going to be going to Israel. In fact, we're going live to a man whose name is Avi Lipkin. He's an Israeli citizen. He was born in the United States but immigrated to Israel in 1968. He's a former member of the Israeli Defense Forces and a former translator inside the Israeli Prime Minister's office, giving him a rare insight on Middle East affairs. He's the co-founder of Israel Today magazine. Avi has written several books under the pen name Victor Mordecai, including Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat? Now remember, it was May 14th. Now, yesterday was my birthday, and so I remember that. But it was in 1948, as a little boy, I remember hearing about what was happening in Israel 64 years ago, yesterday, when David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of a Jewish state known as the State of Israel. And I would like to say, Avi, it's a privilege to have you join us today.
Always great to be on your show, Vic.
Avi, how would you describe the relationship between the Obama administration and the State of Israel?
Okay, well, firstly, let me say one thing. Before I go into attack mode, okay, I just want to say that it's been 60 years since World War II, since Israel was created. And even 60 years ago, 70 years ago, during World War II and up to World War II, there was a very strong Arabist influence in the State Department, and American presidents always were loyal to Saudi Arabia because of the strategy of oil. And in the last few decades, it's oil and cash, petrodollars. And so in World War II, it was to block the Nazis from getting the oil. And the Battle of El Alamein basically stopped the German army from reaching the oil. After World War II, it was the Cold War with the Soviets. And so the State Department and the U.S. government were always pro-Arab in order to ensure strategic oil supplies. And especially in the last 10 years or so, it's been the cash flow of all that money going to the Arabs and to the Muslims being recycled into the United States of America. So there's a very strong interdependence between the U.S. government and the Islamic and Arab world. And so we have to look at the relationship with Israel through that lens. Now, of course, Israel is a strong ally for the United States. It is the most powerful military in the region. Israel is like a land-based aircraft carrier for the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, in order to praise President Obama, it's a Pyrrhic praise, of course, but he doubled the size of the special area just outside of the Tel Aviv airport where American military supplies are stored. Clinton actually is the one who built it first, and Obama doubled the size. So, like I said before, Israel is a land-based aircraft carrier and war material depot for the U.S. military. And because I do feel that a war with Iran is coming close, there is this strategic alliance between the Israeli military and the American military, which transcends any kind of political, problems that might happen between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister or coalition in Israel. Now, having said that, I want to go into what I think are the reasons you're having me on your show, and to go into things that most Americans are not aware of at all.
Well,
Now,
Avi, one of the things that we would like to talk about is, we've been watching as the president has been announcing various czars that he has put into places of power. Czars. This a fantastic thing. This is, of course, czars. I think the name comes from Russia. I'm not sure if that's where he learned it, but he's certainly placed. He's bypassed cabinet members, and these are czars who literally are in charge of these various things. Now, one of the things, he had a czar known as Cass Sustain. Now, I don't know if he's Jewish or not, but the issue here, he was a complete academic Marxist, a regulatory czar. And here now we have Samantha Smith, another czar. This one is being called the atrocity czar. The atrocity czar. And here, what really blows my mind, in 2002, Samantha Powers sat for an interview with Harry Chrysler, director of the Institute of International Studies at Berkeley. And Chrysler asked her the following question. He said, let's say you were an advisor to the President of the United States, which in fact she now is. How would you respond to the current events in Israel? Would you advise him to put a structure in place to monitor that situation, at least if one party or another starts looking like they might be moving toward genocide? Powers' response, seen in the video, is her advice to the president. And here it is, folks. Point number 1, she advises, alienate the American Jewish community, and indeed all Americans, such as evangelical Christians, who support the state of Israel because Israeli leaders are destroying the lives of their own people. Item 2, pour billions of dollars of American taxpayers' money into the new state of Palestine. And number 3, stage an American ground invasion of Israel and the Palestinian territories, a mammoth protection force, and a military presence that will be imposed by external intervention. Avi, is there any question where these czars are coming from?
Well, you know what? I agree 100% that this is a complete disaster, having a woman like this, having a person like this in such a position. And if we look at the situation in Syria, the world is demanding military intervention by the world against the Bashar al-Assad regime. Now, if indeed this happens, and you see Turkey and other Islamic countries, Qatar, maybe Egypt, United States, NATO attacking the Bashar al-Assad regime, then this will be the precedent needed to do the same thing to Israel. In other words, the Palestinians would then rise up in revolt, expecting a crushing repression by the Israeli military, which would justify an American attack on Israel. So I understand where this is coming from. But let me, if I may, can I say something? I'm not a Christian, but can I say something very Christian?
Yes.
Well, I think I've said this on your show before. I started my work in America, in the churches, and in public forums in 1990. Now, in 1991, right after Desert Storm, I was invited to the Council on Foreign Relations to speak in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And they told me in no uncertain terms that Israel would be sacrificed for a barrel of oil, because the only thing that matters is the barrel of oil. The only thing that made America great is the barrel of oil. And a dear Christian friend of mine who was there got up really angry with these people, said, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. You said that what made America great was the barrel of oil? Nonsense. What made America great was Jesus Christ."
Amen.
And I was sitting there completely dumbfounded in the room because I was watching this Christian guardian angel of mine fighting against these anti-Christian people. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the tradition of the anti-Christian people was to kill 6 million Jews in World War II together with the Nazis. And like I said before, the State Department, President Roosevelt, a democratic socialist like Obama, was solidly with the Saudis and sacrificed 6 million Jews. Had America had a Christian conservative president in World War II, we could have saved a few million people.
Amen.
People would have died. We could have saved a few people. Now, let me tell you another Christian testimony. I was with a pastor up in the Northwest. I don't want to say exactly where. He was in the Navy, and he did something really heroic, and they decided to send him to officer training in the U.S. Navy. And before they sent him to officer training, they had something called the loyalty exam. And they asked him, if you were captain of this ship, what would you do if you were given orders to nuke Tel Aviv? And I'm not talking about the Soviet Navy, and I'm not talking about Arab or Iranian Navy. I'm talking about the U.S. Navy. Mm-hmm. And so this Christian sailor started laughing. And so the captain said, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, "Well, firstly, because God promised in the Bible that such a thing would never happen to Israel. And secondly, I wouldn't want to be on that ship if it got orders to nuke Israel." But the point I'm saying is that there are standing orders to attack Israel by the U.S. government. And this was 30 years ago that the sailor, he's a pastor now, and, but 30 years ago he was a sailor. He told me his testimony, and they threw him out of the Navy. So you do have, in the U.S. government, you do have in the U.S. military, people who are solidly Christian, good people. But you also have in the military, you also have in the government, people who are anti-Christian. Mm-hmm. And what I've been doing the last 22 years has been to try, as a Jew, to stir up a Christian revival, because if you have a Christian leadership in Washington, Israel has better chances to survive. And if you have an anti-Christian leadership, these people will choose people like Samantha Powers.
Well, I tell you, Avi, the way the world is headed, the only answer is a savior, and this hasn't come from dollars. I saw what happened in the 6-Day War when God intervened on Israel's behalf. That was an absolute miracle.
Can I tell you another miracle, sir?
Sure.
You know what? I'm cleaning up my computer, cleaning up my old emails. I'm looking at emails. You remember the Arab Spring started in February a year ago?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the emails a year and a half ago, up to November, December of 2010. And everything I'm seeing is that the Obama administration is preparing to apply the screws to Israel. Israel is going to be this, and Israel is going to be that. The Obama government is going to jump on Israel. And God reshuffled the deck. In February of 2011, the whole Arab world went bananas. It's called the Arab Spring. Yeah. And the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, the Fanatic Sunnis, backed by President Obama, are wiping out the Christians of Egypt, wiping out the Christians of Syria, wiping out the Christians of Lebanon and Iraq. And you want to know something? In another 4 or 5 years from now, there won't be any more Christians in the Middle East except one country.
Okay, we're going to be right back in just a moment.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, popular creation speaker with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, efforts to extend life are receiving a lot of publicity these days. Could this really happen?
Chris, it is true that many scientists are claiming to be on the verge of extending life indefinitely. I don't believe all the claims, but much is being done. The real problem, however, is not physical death, but spiritual death. When God created Adam and Eve, they were to live forever. But when they sinned, physical death began to rule and was passed on to all of creation. Medical and scientific advances may enable some people to live to an old age, but it doesn't address the real problem that man and all things die because of man's sin. Jesus Christ, however, died to set things right, and there will be a new heavens and a new earth where there will be no more pain or suffering or death. You see, Chris, the back to Genesis truth of creation extends throughout all of history.
This is Chris O'Brien. Thanks for going back to Genesis.
And welcome back to Crosstalk as we're talking with Avi Lipkin from Israel today. And Avi, during the break, you were mentioning that Ron Nachman is still the mayor of Ariel. Give him greetings from VCY, will you?
I definitely will. You know, he had been sick with cancer. I know a lot of Jews and a lot of Christians were praying for him. And he's gotten better. He's recovered, and he's fully in the saddle.
Great.
And they're doing such a remarkable job there in Ariel.
Well, I remember he was here in our studios many years ago, and we just regarded that visit so great. Well, let's get back to this issue of these czars. Samantha Powers, of course, and I just read to you what her advice to the president is. I mean, undermining Israel. Now, I mean, didn't Samantha Powers call for the United States to invade Israel back in 2002 and has since equated Israel with terrorists? Your response?
Okay, well, now I want to get to the heart of the interview, if I may.
Go right ahead.
You know, my wife Rachel is Jewish from Egypt. I am Jewish from America. Because I was born and raised in America, raised in the American school system, I think like a Christian. My wife was born and raised in a Muslim country, educated in an Islamic country, so she thinks like a Muslim. My wife is an intelligence gatherer for the Israeli government. She monitors their radio and their TV and their newspapers. And she picks up all the time all kinds of broadcasts in Arabic, which show that Obama is a Muslim, that Obama is a Saudi plant. And by the way, there's a YouTube I recommend to everyone listening to the show. Go to the YouTube, and it's free. YouTube is Saudi Plant, P-L-A-N-T. It's about me and my wife. And I didn't even know that this YouTube was made until people told me that it had already gone viral, and there are over 3.5 million hits to this YouTube. But what it shows is that Obama swore to the Egyptian foreign minister in 2010. He said that in 2009, he swore he's a Muslim. His father is a Muslim, stepfather is a Muslim, raised in a mosque and in a madrasa in Indonesia until age 11. And I don't know if you remember the Catholic Jesuit priest Francis Xavier, who said, give me a child until 10 and I'll make him a man. And so Obama was made a Muslim man in Indonesia by age 11. And he said, I've got health care problems, I've got economic problems in America, but Muslims in Egypt and Muslims in the Muslim world, be patient. I will show you when the time comes what I am going to do to Israel. Now, my wife picked up other broadcasts. For example, the Saudis were saying, we will have a Muslim in the White House in 2008. The Saudis also said Obama has 3 tasks. Task number 1 is to destroy the Shiite threat in Iran. Task number 2 is to destroy the Jewish threat, Israel. Task number 3 is to destroy the great Christian Satan America and turn America into a Muslim country. And these 3 orders that he has from the Saudis are the things I want to talk about, and Samantha Powers is part of this. Firstly, let's say like this. You know that everybody is talking about the nuclear project of Iran. The nuclear project of Iran, forgive me for saying it, is a fig leaf. There are other reasons, more important reasons, to overthrow the Ayatollah regime rather than the nuclear threat. One of them, of course, is oil, money. The world economy needs the Iranian oil. The Iranians don't want to sell the oil because that would be strengthening Christianity. The way to destroy Christianity is to destroy the economy of Christianity by denying the West the oil. And so the one world government, I'm sure you've heard of that, wants to overthrow the Ayatollah regime because they're insane and they don't want to develop their oil. They have to develop their oil for the good of the world, for the good of the human race. So this is a much more important reason than the nuclear. The nuclear problem will be solved when the Ayatollah regime is overthrown and the United Nations and Obama together replace the Ayatollahs with a proportional representation government, parliament. Now, but here comes the catch. The real reason for the war with Iran is because Iran is Shiite, Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and the Saudis are much more threatened by Iran than they are threatened by the Jews or the Christians or anybody. The Saudis have ordered Obama to overthrow this regime, and I think pretty much, I think that Israel and America are totally coordinated on the war, or shall I say the different covert and overt operations that are going to take place in the immediate future against Iran, which will overthrow the regime and probably make Obama, I hate to say this, make him so popular by the November elections that this will help him to get reelected. Now, that's commandment number one from the Saudis. Destroy the Shiite threat, replace it with a more benevolent system, which will not behead the Saudis. Second, destroy Israel. Samantha Powers plays a very important role in this. The Palestinians do not accept the existence of a Jewish state. So if the Palestinians rise up, knowing that Samantha Powers is going to gallop in to the rescue by ordering NATO and ordering the U.S. military to attack Israel, to occupy Israel, to force Israel to accept the Palestinian state, which will never accept the Jewish state, which means the destruction of Israel. And finally, okay, now for this, you're going to have to hold on to your seat. Everybody's wondering, why is the State Department, why is the President supporting the Muslim Brotherhood? The Muslim Brotherhood has as its goal, you kill the Jews on Saturday and you kill the Christians on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So there are no more Jews in the Arab world. So what do you have? You've got 8 million Christians in Egypt and 76 million Muslims. You have 2 million Christians in Syria and 18 million non-Christians. In other words, you have Sunnis, primarily Sunnis and Shiites. Lebanon, you also have 2 million Christians. The rest are Sunnis, Shiites, and Druze. And in Iraq, you have 1 million Christians. So you have 8 million Christians in Egypt, 5 million Christians in the Levant. And what the Muslim Brotherhood is going to do is, the Muslim Brotherhood is going to win. The Muslim Brotherhood is going to end up either killing, converting to Islam, or expelling the remaining Christians of Egypt. When the Christians of Egypt are gone, the economy of Egypt is gone. When the economy of Egypt is gone, the Muslims, 76 million Muslims who remain, are going to starve to death. What do people do when they starve? They leave. Where do they go to? America. Who's going to bring them in? Obama. Where is he going to settle them? In the lands confiscated by Agenda 21. So Obama's going to bring in 50 to 100 million Muslims from the Middle East, from all these failed countries, because the Muslim Brotherhood is incapable of ruling and creating an economy. No international corporation will invest in Egypt or in any Islamic country that's killing its Christians or foreigners. So you're going to have 50 to 100 million Muslims. Let me tell you a little something. You've heard, of course, of Springfield, Missouri. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yes.
I'm there every 6 months speaking at a Assemblies of God Prophecy Club there, Dr. David Allen Lewis. And I was there 2 years ago, and they told me that the featured speaker a month before I was there 2 years ago was the Pastor Don Jones. Pastor Don Jones has orphanages in Mexico and Haiti. After the earthquake in Haiti, he met with a senior UN official who told him that Obama had told the senior UN official that America would be a Muslim country by 2016. By the way, this is available on a CD. If you call 417-882-6470, you speak to Ramona Lewis, $5, she'll send it to you.
Wait, one more time on that CD.
You ask for the CD of Pastor Don Jones.
Okay, and then the phone number.
The telephone number is 417-882-6470, and he explains exactly what the UN official told him, that America will be Muslim by 2016. 2016 is the 8th year of President Obama, meaning he's going to bring in 50 to 100 million Muslims, because it is inevitable that all these Islamic countries cannot rule. They don't know how to rule themselves. They're completely inept. And after they kill all the Christians that remain, there will not be any economy left. And so you're going to have, overnight, 50 to 100 million Muslims coming in. You cannot put them in American cities. You've got to create entirely new areas of populating the United States and Canada with these Muslims.
Where Sharia law holds forth. Where Sharia law holds forth.
Yes, and so you have Agenda 21, you have Sharia law, and by the way, I'm going to throw out a real wild card now. You have all these people who talk about the American debt being insolvable. You cannot, we're going to get $14 trillion from them. And the answer is very simple. You don't think the Saudis have $14 trillion in cash? They'll give you the cash, and they say, okay, we own you now. We're going to take over America. And Americans would say, hey, if we don't do this, we're going to lose, our economy, and we're going to lose our dollar and everything. And so the American economic problem is not a problem. The Saudis come in and bring in their cash. But the problem here is America will surrender its Christianity. I have to tell you another thing. I don't know, Vic, if you remember, but I was very active in Switzerland 3 years ago. Well, it's only 3 years ago. they had a problem with the Muslims wanting to put in minarets. Minarets are these tall spires where they broadcast very loudly, Allahu Akbar, the 5 times called to prayer per day.
Prayer towers. Yeah.
And I spoke in 23 German-speaking cities. I was on Swiss national TV, Channel 1. And the vote took place on November the 29th, 2009. And it's a praise report, basically. I participated in the Christian victory in Switzerland over the Muslims. And 57.5% of the Swiss people voted against the minarets, so there are no minarets there. So the Muslims took me to court, and I was convicted of hate crimes because I spoke against another religion.
Oh, no.
And I want you to know, Hillary Clinton and President Obama are now bringing this same law to the United States, probably through executive order, that if you attack another religion, meaning Islam, you will go to jail for 3 years. And so they're going to bring in 50 to 100 million Muslims, and anyone who protests is going to jail. And you've heard about FEMA.
Yeah. Well, and not only this, of course, if you wanted to talk against Christianity, then that's fair game. If you want to,
of course, everybody can attack Christianity or Judaism or any religion. The only religion you cannot talk against is Islam.
Well, it is. I was just talking to a rabbi friend of mine from Brooklyn earlier today, and I told him you're going to be on the air, and he says, Vic, he said this world is getting darker, even in the United States. He says where it's in darkness and it's getting darker. And he said, he's predicting that unless there's a change in our leadership, we're going to be facing some very, very, very terrible times.
I have to tell you something, if I may. I've written 6 books now. Mm-hmm. And from my 3rd book, which came out in 2003, 3rd book, 4th book, 5th book, and 6th book, and in all of my CDs and DVDs, most of them are Chuck Missler teachings that, I did at Chuck Missler's. Mm-hmm. But I talk about the Edmonton Revelation. The Edmonton Revelation, Edmonton is a city in Canada, in the province of Alberta. It's just before the Canadian Rockies. And I was there, and I spoke in churches up there, and then on the Sabbath I went to the Jewish synagogue. And I was shouted down by 2 Jews who wouldn't let me talk against Islam. And there was a Christian lady there who was visiting, and she works for the government of Canada. She's a social worker. And she got up and said, if you're not going to let Avi speak, maybe if Avi agrees, I should say a few words. I said, sure. So she got up and she spoke. This is called the Edmonton Revelation. She is a caseworker for an Egyptian Muslim woman doctor who is in hiding in Canada now in a safe house with 24-hour Royal Canadian Mounted Police protection. What's her story? When she applied for a visa in Egypt, to move to Canada, the Muslim Brotherhood came to her and said, we know you're going to Canada. You're going to work for us. And she said, what does that mean? Well, you're a doctor. You're going to have a clinic in Edmonton, and all the Jews will come to you, and all the Christians will come to you, and all the Muslims will come to you. You're going to be the most popular doctor because you're like a Mother Teresa figure. And when a war breaks out in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors, a war is going to break out here in Canada and the U.S. and Mexico and Latin America and Europe, and we're going to kill every last Jew on the face of the earth because this is what Islam teaches. And so she said, listen, guys, I'm a doctor. I'm a good Muslim. I give charity. I go to the mosque. But I don't believe in killing people, even the Jews.
We're going to take it.
So standing next to her was another Muslim woman helping her in her clinic. They grabbed her, these 3 jihadis. They slit her throat, the friend of this doctor, and then they killed her. They pointed the...
Okay, we're going to have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Year after year, generation after generation, we as Americans enjoy the right and opportunity to let our voices be heard through the election of our governing officials. With over 200 years of peaceful transition from one elected body to another, the stability of America's republic stands alone among nations. Our founders pledged their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor in the establishment of this nation. Our country's founding documents have guided this nation and are the substance by which today's laws are judged. Do you own a copy of the Constitution? Documents of Freedom is a pocket-sized booklet containing the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all other amendments passed. The booklet also features the Declaration of Independence and Washington's Farewell. Documents of Freedom is available for a donation of $5 or more to VCY America and can be made by calling 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where we're visiting with Avi Lipkin, who is in Israel, live right now with us, and sharing with us a horrendous story about the doctor who moved to Canada and then was approached by the Muslim Brotherhood and warned that there'd be breaking out war in the United States and Canada, and that she was to work for them. Avi, you said they threatened her, they grabbed her. What happened then?
Well, yes, they grabbed her best friend, another Muslim woman, helping her in the clinic, and they slit her throat and they killed her. And then they pointed their finger at this Muslim woman. The doctor said, "If you don't work with us, this is what's going to happen to you."
Oh.
Anyway, so she got asylum. She traveled to Canada with protection from the Canadian police. But this Christian woman in the Orthodox Jewish synagogue on the Sabbath, I live in a funny world because as Jews, Christians, Muslims, it's all mixed up together. Anyway, so she said, "I work with the Canadian police," and they said to me that 90% of the Muslims are peacekeeping, law-abiding people, but 10% are terrorists. And when they get orders for jihad, they're going to murder Jews. And in America, 50 to 70% of the Jews intermarry with Christians. So they're going to kill the Christian spouses. They're going to kill the children of the Jew and the Christian intermarriage. Anybody who is pro-Israel is going to be killed. And so we're talking now about 5 to 6 million Jews in the United States, maybe married to 2, 3, 4 million Christians. So maybe we're talking about a nuclear group of 10 million people, Jews and Christians. You already have 30 million Muslims in the United States. Let me tell you, everybody goes nuts when I say this. They say, no, only 2 million. You've got 9 million Iranians in America who fled when the Shah fell from power. Most of these people are great people. Those are Shiites. Then you've got 7 million Arabs, because Iranians are Iranians and Arabs are Arabs. It's 7 million, 9 million, 16 million. Then you've got 4 million Farrakans, the black Muslims. That's 20 million. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there are millions and millions of Somalis and Bosnians and Turks and Indonesians and all kinds of people who come in. People coming in across the border from Mexico, over 200,000 Muslims came in within a period of a year and a half. I have the email. If people want it, I'll send it to them. You know what? Let me tell you a little story, Vic. I fly in and out of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. And I rent a car, I drive around, then I return the car at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and then I fly to my next destination. So a few years ago, I stopped to return my car at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and I gave the keys to this young guy, very, very nice guy. He was a Muslim from Indonesia, from Jakarta. And he says to me, America is the greatest country on earth. And I said to him, listen, I got to catch a plane, but you're right, I know America is the greatest country on earth. Why do you think America is the greatest country on earth? He said, well, I used to be a delivery boy for FedEx, UPS type company in Jakarta. And one day I was in the U.S. Embassy, and the American embassy official pointed his finger at me and said, hey, you want to move to America? There's a plane leaving tomorrow. Bring your family, you're on the plane. No passports, no visas, no nothing. Just get on the plane and come. We'll take care of all the paperwork when you arrive. Can you believe it? You have these free charter jets every day arriving in the United States, bringing in Muslims without passports and without visas, and it's all because people in Washington are bribed and people in Washington are subservient to the Saudi agenda. And the point is, you're talking about millions and billions and trillions of dollars, so why not have somebody like Samantha Powers isolating Israel and alienating Israel? Because if you're talking about the trillions of dollars the U.S. economy needs, so Israel will be sacrificed for a barrel of oil.
And ladies and gentlemen, Samantha Powers is advising the President of the United States. And remember her answers. I'm going to repeat them again. She had a 3-point answer, and the question was basically this. How would you respond to the current events in Israel? Would you advise him, meaning the President, to put a structure in place to monitor that situation, at least if one party or another starts looking like they may be moving toward genocide? And now Powers' response, seen in a video that you can watch if you go to vcyamerica.org and click on the Egyptian, we have a different link on that. At any rate, and here's what she said: alienate the American Jewish community. and indeed all the Americans, such as the evangelical Christians, who support the state of Israel because Israeli leaders are, quote, destroying the lives of their own people, unquote. Then the second item, pour billions of dollars of American taxpayers' money into the, quote, new state of Palestine. And thirdly, to stage an American ground invasion of Israel and the Palestinian territories, a mammoth protection force, and a military presence that would be imposed by external intervention. Avi, those are very frightening words.
Yes, and I recommend very closely for people to watch the situation in Syria, because if indeed the West, under orders from Saudi Arabia, which is Sunni, calls for the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, who is Shiite, and again, Bashar al-Assad is not a good man, and his system is not a good system, but he's protecting his Christians. He's protecting the Druze. He's protecting his people, the Shiites, and some of the Sunnis who are with him. If the Muslim Brotherhood, backed by the Turks and the Saudis, wins, you're going to have ethnic cleansing in Syria, and by extension, ethnic cleansing in Lebanon, and by extension, ethnic cleansing in Iraq. It'll be the end of Christianity in those three countries. And then, after they have this NATO intervention in Syria, you will see NATO intervention against Israel.
What I was reading to you today, you'll find rather interesting. It's from a site called JewishIndy.com. JewishIndy.com. That's where they were talking in detail about this declaration that has come forth, telling Congress that there are people need to stand by and say we're not going to stand for this stuff as Obama delivers Israel to her enemies, and there needs to be a word there. Well, we're going to. I know that you have a website, and you have information that people can receive. And Avi, would you share how people can get your information?
Okay. Well, firstly, I have an 800 number for people who don't like to order over internet with PayPal. The 800 number is 1-800-540-0828, 1-800-540-0828. If you want to order books, CDs, and DVDs, you can go to my website, www.vicmord.com, V-I-C, half of Victor, V-I-C, half of Mordecai, M-O-R-D.com, vicmord.com. And, by the way, my son and I have established Lipkin Tours as a tourism company to bring Christian evangelicals to Israel to see the off-the-beaten-path things that most Christians that have been to Israel so many times. They want to see the real biblical sites, not just the Via Dolorosa sites. And so if people go to www.Lipkin Tours, we offer very, very nice specialized tours. Pastors can ask for special tailor-made tours. We do that for them. And by the way, I'm working to form a Judeo-Christian political party to run for the Israeli government, the Israeli Knesset, where my candidates will be Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian. It'll be not only an international alliance of Jews and Christians to stand with Israel, but a national alliance in Israel of Jews and Christians to defend Jews and Christians from the Islamic juggernaut.
We're going to open our phone lines right now. The island welfare clip I was making reference to, which is on our website, and I was kind of mixing my thoughts there, but those who wanted information on the Australian island welfare, that's the link on vcyamerica.org. Australian Island Welfare. However, we are going to invite phone calls right now. If you'd like to talk with Avi, he presently is in Israel. You can call and ask him questions. Our telephone number is 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. We need you to get your calls online very quickly because our time is limited. 800-733-9829 with your comments, perhaps a word of support for Israel, perhaps a question that you have regarding what's happening. We're going to go right now to Steve in Florida. And, Steve, you're on the air with Avi Lipkin.
Thank you, Vic. Avi, you mentioned earlier about 10 million or so that are going to be murdered in this country. That's very believable. But the only way that can happen is if the firearms have been confiscated. So I want to remind that to your public.
Avi is still there.
Yes, I am still there. Still here. What I was saying was not killing 10 million. What I was saying was that you have 10 million Jews and Christians who I believe if and when a war breaks out in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors, then you will see the 10, 20, 30 million, and then maybe more, 40, 50 million Muslims. Some of them are going to rise up in 9/11 type terrorist attacks, and they're not afraid to die. They cherish death. And American law enforcement, with all the best of intentions, will not be capable of dealing with it. And so they're not going to kill 10 million. What's going to happen is they're going to kill some, and then a lot of Jews and Christians are going to go into hiding, and eventually a lot of them will eventually leave the United States and come to Israel. So I see this basically as like a spatula being used by God. You had the fishers, and now you have the hunters, and these hunters are going to be the Muslims. And I believe America will come out of this mess, but it's going to be a very rough time, weeks, months, until this situation is brought under control. And again, the more Muslims you have in America, the more capable they will be to wreak havoc on Jews and Christians.
Okay, we're going to go to Marv in Lexington, Kentucky. Marv, you're on the air with Avi.
Hi, this is Mary.
Okay, Mary, please turn your radio all the way down, okay?
Okay.
Because we're still hearing it, okay? All the way down. Okay. Thank you. Go right ahead now.
Okay. I was just wondering, I was listening to your guest. I was in my car, and when I turned the radio on.
You're talking to him right now.
Oh, okay. I didn't get his name, but I was just wondering.
This is Avi Lipkin.
Avi Lipkin?
Avi Lipkin.
Avi Lipkin. Okay.
Your question,
What can I do to help get this information out to the American taxpayers so they don't vote this guy back in?
Well, firstly, there are. I imagine, madam, that you have a computer and internet, correct?
Right.
So there are so many websites, and there are so many YouTubes, and there's so many ministries, Christian ministries, which are pro-Israel, and you've got to support those ministries. You've got to share the message to your pastor, share the message to your family, share the message to your coworkers, to your police in your local area where you live, civic leaders, fire department. You've got to basically become a preacher to warn everybody of what's coming, because Israel and America, I believe, are one. They're joined at the hip. You know, the same God and the same Bible.
Right.
And God forbid anything happen to America, Israel will suffer. God forbid anything happen to Israel, America will suffer. So you just have to, get the information. There's a lot there. By the way, if you look up Avi Lipkin in Google search, there's tons and tons of YouTube, tons and tons of free download information. Learn the information and then pick up the cross and start preaching.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. We're going to go to Anna in Ixonia, Wisconsin. Our phone number, 800-733-9829. Anna, you're on the air.
Hi, Avi. Praise the Lord. I'm going to cry here because the Hebrew National has been on my heart for years and years and years. I support friendsofisrael.org. There's so many wonderful ones out there, but that one and their magazine, every other month they send out a beautiful, beautiful magazine on how to support them even more.
Now, your question, Anna, what was your question for Avi? Very quickly, because our time is limited.
My question is also, yes, what else can we do? Just keep letting us know, keep telling us what else can we do. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll be right back. And again, we're limited on time, so we shall return in just 60 seconds. This is Crosstalk on VCY.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Continuing on our list of 20 characteristics of false teachers embraced by the false church. Today we look at number 8 and number 9. Number 8, false teachers deliberately take Scripture out of context to attract a following. Acts chapter 20, verse 30 says, "And from among yourselves men will rise up speaking perverse things." Actually translated, better translation, speaking perverse, distorted, or twisted things. For what purpose? To draw away the disciples after themselves. So false teachers deliberately take Scripture out of context to attract a following. Number 9, false teachers sound educated and speak with persuasive words, but they speak error. Colossians 2:4 says, "Now this I say, lest anyone should deceive you with persuasive words." Colossians 2:8 goes on to say, "Don't be cheated by the philosophies of men and their empty deceit." So false teachers take Scripture out of context to attract a following, and they speak with persuasive words. For the Worldview Week in Minute, I'm Brandon House.
And welcome back to Crosstalk as the clock is moving so quickly. Avi Lipkin is in Israel speaking to us live today, where it's like 10 o'clock at night there, 10:30 or whatever. Avi, as we were looking at some of the information, just recently, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formed a unity government, national unity government. What is the significance of this decision?
Well, I think that very, very important. We have a number of local, national, political things that have to be dealt with, but I think primarily it's to strengthen the prime minister if he decides to carry out an attack on Iran, or if Israel gets attacked by Syria or Lebanon. I have to tell you, by the way, you remember I said earlier in the show that we see things happening purportedly to hurt Israel, destroy Israel, and then God reshuffles the deck. And so we saw, the State Department and President Obama were ganging up on Israel, and also the Arab Spring came and reshuffled the deck. What I saw 3 weeks ago, was that Yuval Diskin and Meir Dagan, who were former heads of intelligence and Secret Service, and they're lefties, they're socialists, and they attacked Netanyahu, said he wasn't a good leader, and they attacked Ehud Barak, who's also a socialist, but because he works with Netanyahu, they don't trust him either. He's not a good leader. And they said that Netanyahu and Ehud Barak were unqualified to lead the country in a war against Iran or in anything else. So all of a sudden, what does Netanyahu do? And by the way, these people were prompted by Obama and by the leftists to attack Netanyahu. So what does Netanyahu do? He co-opts the Kadima party. Shaul Mofaz is a former defense minister, former chief of staff of the army. Ehud Barak's former defense is the defense minister, and Bughi Ayalon is also a former chief of staff. So now Netanyahu is flanked by 3 top military people. And so Yuval Diskin and Meir Dagan, if they attack Netanyahu, Netanyahu has shown them how wrong they are. He has the best people, the best qualified people next to him if indeed something happens with our neighbors or with Iran.
We have time for just a couple more quick calls, and this is Florida. Sonny online, and Sonny, go right ahead.
What's the gentleman's name? Is it Avi?
Avi, yes,
I just want to say God bless you, and I hope that the Lord is using you in a mighty way to get the word out. I myself am a Christian. I was born in Pakistan, so I have a great deal of concern of what's going on in this country. I was wondering if you could point me in the direction as what I can do in this town that I live in Bradenton, to just kind of get the word out. And I'm just really, my heart kind of breaks. So if you can help me out, that would be great.
What can you do, Avi?
Well, you know what? If you have connections in Washington, speak to your representatives in Washington. If you have connections with your local or state representatives, speak to your local state representatives. Speak to your pastors. Speak to your law enforcement. Speak to your fire brigade, your fire department. Speak to civic leaders, your family, your neighbors, your work colleagues. Learn about get the information, study it. And there's so much free downloadable information if you go to Google search or anything, YouTube. Educate yourself and then go out and preach it. This is what the lady before also, she asked me what she could do. It's the same thing. And then the lady from Florida from before, you've got to go out and become soldiers, because it's your Israel, it's your Jerusalem, and it's your Messiah too.
Let's go right now to Racine, Wisconsin, and Shirley in Racine. You're on the air.
I was wondering if Avi could repeat that 888 number he gave earlier in the program.
That 800 number, Avi, you gave out?
888. Started out 8.
No, but the number for my books is 1-800-540-0828.
Yeah, I have that number, but a little earlier in the program, you gave an 888 number.
Maybe Vic had a number that he gave out.
Yeah, I don't have that right in front of me now. That was, I think it was 800, was it 5400828?
Yes, that's for ordering my 6 books.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Shirley, I don't have that number here. Finally, we're going to go to Renee in Racine. Renee, you're on the air.
Yeah, real quick, I want to say 2 things. First of all, I think out of your biblical prophecy to Micah 5:9, which states that Israel will get 8 countries to go along on their side. And another thing I wanted to ask on what you said about sustainable development and how Obama plans to take sustainable development houses and let Islamic or Muslim people go ahead and occupy those houses. Can you elaborate on that? Because I didn't quite catch that.
We have 60 seconds left, Avi.
Okay, well, what I am saying is not about houses per se. I'm talking about forests. I'm talking about national parks. I'm talking about secluded areas which do not have contact with the indigenous Christian population of America. People will be living in isolation in solidly Muslim neighborhoods, and they're going to knock down trees, and they're completely within the middle of a forest and build a city there. And it's going to be from scratch. And they're already doing this in Canada and in Virginia and in other places.
And they've already proven it for China. Was it some other nations that have come in? They've purchased, was it 50, 60 acres? Just a small community as a big experiment already.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Renee, for your call. Avi, it's always good to talk with you, and our prayer again, and as Christians, our prayer is that the Messiah may come and bring that the answer to man's need for real peace. The wars and the battles and all of the things that go on. Any time a nation shakes its fist in the face of God, and our nation in America is guilty of that. We saw Israel face the discipline of God whenever they strayed from him. And God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And today we would need people to be praying for the nation of Israel. Pray that God would bring an awareness and that his Holy Spirit would awaken the hearts and the convictions of people across this country to confess their sin and recognize that the only hope for a world is to recognize that God is the author and finisher of our faith. Avi, it's always good to have you on the line, and we wish you well, and have a great evening there in Israel.
Always at your service, Vic.
Thank you so much, Avi. I want to thank you for joining us today, and Avi is always an interesting guest to visit with, and as he even admitted, we need a Messiah, and I'm so glad I met him. So glad I know the Messiah that has the answer. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on Crosstalk.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.